The 8-bit guy is a hoopy frood and he definitely knows where his towel is, but let us say that we have a difference of opinion when it comes to the PowerMac G5. He thinks the PowerMac G5 isn't much use anymore. I disagree. I think it can be a lot of use. He says that the production quality is very high and that the Mac is beautiful. I agree on this. Perhaps, though, the problem is that he went for the water-cooled model. Maybe that's not the model to get. His, at 2.5 GHz and 4 cores, was certainly a powerhouse, but mine, on the face of it, at only 1.8 GHz and with only 4 GB of memory, only PCI slots and only AGP 8x for graphics, might be a lot more powerful? How can this be? Many older Mac users have a great investment in software. I've spent thousands of pounds on software over the years, and I don't really want to throw it all away just because Apple says my new Mac can't run my old software. So I keep my old G5 around, and that lets me run my old software, including my old 68K software. Sometimes there really isn't anything better than running your software on the real hardware. Emulation just doesn't cut it all the time. And it's not just software either. I've got a wealth of hardware which I've amassed over the years which will no longer work with Apple's latest systems. Scanners, graphics tablets, video cameras, you name it. Not compatible with the latest hardware, so it helps to keep an old Mac hanging around so that I can continue to use it. He says the PowerMac G5 is noisy. Not particularly. Certainly not with the 1.8 GHz version. I'm recording this on the PowerMac G5 right now. If you can't hear it, then I can't hear it. It's pretty quiet. The energy consumption is a bit beefy compared with a modern Mac. The 8-bit guy records 355 watts used. When I tested it on mine using a similar kilowatt plug, I recorded 296 watts fully loaded and 185 watts idle, and it still used 11.5 watts when it was sleeping. My Raspberry Pi uses a lot less, but on the other hand my Raspberry Pi really isn't as powerful either. When it comes to operating system, it's pretty limited. I can run macOS 9 in the classic environment only, but that's fine for running most applications and games. I can't run any version of macOS 10 before 10.2. First generation PowerMac G5s can run macOS 10.2 and macOS 10.3. Any PowerMac G5 can run macOS 10.4 and macOS 10.5. Believe it or not, the core of macOS 10.6, which is called Darwin, can run on PowerMac G5s, even though macOS 10.6 itself is Intel only. Anything beyond macOS 10.6 though, even if you're only talking about the core of it, won't run. They're all Intel only. Unlike the 8-bit guy, I've had pretty good luck with Linux. I've managed to run Debian on it, and I've managed to run Yellow Dog Linux on it, and I've managed to run Lubuntu on it as well, which is the lightweight version of Ubuntu Linux. Morphos will also run as long as your Mac isn't a quad-core and as long as it has an ATI graphics card, which unfortunately counts me out. I found web browsing to be responsive and fast, but I used Safari and not Firefox. Firefox appears to be the easy option because Firefox does support modern websites and it has got the latest certificates. But if you use modern Safari, you can upgrade your certificates and upgrade the engine of Safari to being a more modern version so that you can run all the latest websites on your PowerMac G5 without any difficulty.
I have been repeatedly asked to do an episode on the PowerMac G5. Now, I've never actually owned one of these, and to be honest, I've never really understood what the appeal was.
I wanted to pick a pretty challenging website, so I chose YouTube. As you can see, it runs fine. Hi 8-bit guy. I'm not prepared to use Facebook, so I didn't try that. But let's face it, if YouTube runs, Facebook should run fine too.
You definitely don't want to be lugging this thing around much, and lugging this thing through the mall was enough to nearly kill me. On the bright side, it makes a good chair when you need to stop for a rest. It also makes a great pedestal for posing for those nerdy tech photos.
And once more, I invite you to notice how noisy it is. You can't? You can't hear us either? No, these old 1.8 GHz PowerMac G5s really aren't noisy at all. Games, for sure. After all, that's the main point of running an older Mac, so you can run those older games. You can see Quake 4 running here because it's one of the most challenging ones that I have for the PowerMac G5, but it also runs great with Halo, Stubbs the Zombie, Colin McRae Rally and many more besides. In Tiger it'll also run classic titles like Star Wars Pod Racer flawlessly, and it'll usually manage this with the settings maxed out. As you can see here in Quake 4, I haven't dialed anything back.
Warning, incoming attack.
All right, you maggots, haul ass or die.
Oh dear, oh dear. Ah! Hey, Alice! We got Alice! Wake up!
Mom? Dad?
Alice! Mom! Mother! I can't breathe! Get out, Alice! Save yourself, Alice! Get out of the house! Ah, Alice!
Okay, time for a challenge. How about 1080p high definition video? The 8-bit guy showed Deadpool and the fans were pretty noisy, really intrusive. But how about Deadpool 2 on a 1.8 GHz dual-core PowerMac G5? Once again, the fans aren't intruding at all, and as you can see, it's not dropping any frames either. Must admit, there are one or two artifacts, but the artifacts aren't too noticeable. The trick here is to use Core Player rather than QuickTime, VLC or anything else. Core Player does it perfectly, even on an old 1.8 GHz G5. So, in my experience, what works? Web browsing without compromise? Yeah, totally. Movies? Yeah, definitely. Games? Oh, for sure. Work? Including 64-bit Intel coding? Yeah, I've been writing software in Xcode on my PowerMac G5 and it'll still run on my latest Mac Pro in 64-bit mode. iTunes Store? So far, yes. That was a real shocker. I can still buy music on the iTunes Store and I can still download music that I've already purchased on the iTunes Store. It works. iCloud? Again, another shocker. With provisos, this works. I can access my iCloud email. I can even access my iCloud calendar and contacts using Soho Organizer. What I can't do is access my files that are stored on iCloud, and I can't use the latest versions of Dropbox either. And obviously, I can't play the latest games. It's all words, unless I can prove to you in some way that the PowerMac G5 really is a usable machine today. I think I've done some of that with showing you some demonstration. But to prove it, to put the icing on the cake, I thought I'd edit this entire video in iMovie on the PowerMac G5. There are some problems, but they're not the PowerMac G5's fault. They're just deficiencies of an older version of iMovie. But as you can see, this video is HD. I've proved to you, with some little clips, that it's been edited on iMovie on the PowerMac G5. Yes, this is totally a usable machine. So finally, here's the evidence. My PowerMac G5 is sitting on the desk, not a realistic place to put it. Normally you'd probably put it on the floor or underneath your desk. In any case, on top of the desk, the noisiest possible place, it's only registering 47 decibels. I think we can call that quiet. As to speed, I knocked up a quick Apple script to test the performance with which it loaded YouTube, on the basis that was probably the heaviest website that I was likely to load with it. Sure, it's not a speed demon, it takes around 6 seconds to load a YouTube page, but you know what? As long as it plays the video okay, I don't really mind that. My Mac Pro is a lot faster still. I can afford a second or two when watching a YouTube video. The 8-bit guy concludes that the Mac Mini is a better machine than the PowerMac G5. But early generation Intel Mac Minis really aren't as quick. I've tried it. I've got one. If you have any doubt, install Quake 4 or Doom 3, max the settings at 1080p and see which one is playable. For some things, the Intel Mac Mini will be quicker, but all of the time, or even for most use cases? My experience says forget about it. I agree with the conclusion that Apple made the right decision to switch, but that's more about energy consumption and not CPU power. And let's face it, now might be the right time to switch again. ARM is looking very competitive. I do have to ask the question though, was something wrong with the 8-bit guy's PowerMac G5 that it performed so poorly?